Those of you that have been around the channel for a while will know that this was the cheapest 4.4 TDV8 Range Rover in the UK. Yes, the title is correct. I bought the cheapest TDV8 4.4 Range Rover in the UK at the time of its purchase. And since then, I've gone through about probably 20 videos where I've been upgrading, improving, repairing, you name it, to this car to make it my ultimate daily driver. As you saw in that last video, we're no longer living in the leafy suburbs of Warwickshire in England. We're now in sort of quite a rural area of Ireland. So that means dark country lanes, it means bad weather and very, very poor visibility and driving conditions. And that is why in this video I'm going to be doing some LED lighting upgrades on the Range Rover to make it safer on these dark, wet, cold Irish roads. Let's get started. So anyone that owns an L322 Range Rover of this era will know that one of the biggest lighting deficiencies on these cars is the rear reverse lights, particularly if you have to reverse around corners or into a dark driveway at night like we do here. So the eagle-eyed amongst you may already have noticed these LED spotlights that I've placed on the rear spoiler, I guess you'd call it, at the back of the Range Rover. So these are 1000 lumen LED floodlights, and they're going to be wired into the reverse light circuit via a relay, so they come on whenever I select reverse in the Range Rover. In addition to that, because it'd be quite useful to use these lights when I'm not reversing, I'm going to have a switch in the rear of the car that I can turn them on and use them as work lights as well. So far I've just bolted them onto this rear spoiler so far. I haven't wired them in yet, but I'll show you guys how I'm going to do that in a minute. This era of Range Rover is fitted with a reverse camera, which is very, very useful, but in the dark it's pretty much useless. So I'm hoping these LED lights will basically make it like daylight behind the car, so the reversing camera will become useful again at night. So I've pulled the spoiler off just to show you guys. That newer sort of black wire there, you can see the grommet above is just going down, and then I've drilled a small hole in the actual top tailgate itself next to all these other grommets, just to pass the wire through. That's a nice tight fitting grommet there, and if it does turn out to leak, I can always silicone seal that just to get it sealing nicely. So that's passing the wire through into the top tailgate itself. So this is where the wires come out. This is the Deutsch connector that you can see that's connected to the LED light on the other side. The same on this side here. I did have to remove this thing for access, which looks like a bit like an old audio cassette, but it's actually something to do with the digital antenna. From here, these wires are going to pass through these rubber grommets into the roof of the car, and then we're going to run the wiring looms down this side of the boot and into this electrical compartment on the right down here. So that's the plan anyway. So for the next step, I've actually removed the rear right panel in the Range Rover, which gets you into this electrical box where you've got a few modules in here, and you've also got a power distribution board with fuses and relays and stuff like that on it. This is a really handy place to add extra auxiliary stuff to your Range Rover because you've got access to this nice big heavy cable which comes straight from the battery. So that's going to give us a nice strong power source which can take a nice bit of load for these rear LEDs. And we're going to do that using these 12-volt relays. I bought these off Amazon. They've just got a nice little plug on the bottom with a few wires attached as well. It makes it a bit easier to wire up. And these relays are going to be placed in these holders and mounted in the rear right side of the Range Rover, in the electrical compartment that we've got there. So these are a 40 amp relay. They're well in excess of what we're going to need, but they should be nice and reliable for turning these lights on and off. And this is the final part of the upgrades that I've got planned for the Range Rover. This is just a little 12-volt switch panel that you can get from eBay or from Amazon online. It's also got some USB outputs here, a voltage readout, and also a 12-volt socket there. So it's just quite a handy little setup. It comes pre-wired as well, which is quite handy. All of these switches are pre-fused as well. And my plan for this is to actually mount it in the boot of the Range Rover, in the panel that covers the electrical panel on the rear right side. So what I'm hoping to do is use one of these switches to turn on the rear reverse lights to use them as work lights. So I can turn them on and off manually as needed. And then additional switches and stuff like that can be used for future stuff that might get put into the Range Rover. So maybe a fridge if it gets used as an expedition truck down the line, or maybe some more lighting, the kind of thing that you see on expedition vehicles and things like that for cooking or for working under. So yeah, this is the plan. So this is the rear panel in the Range Rover that I'm going to mount the switch panel in. I've decided I'm going to mount it here because that's the only place in the compartment where there's enough space behind this panel to fit the wiring in the back of the switches and stuff like that. So in order to drill the holes we need, I've just taken all the switches out of this panel and all of the USB outlets and things like that, just so we could use this as a template as to where I'm going to drill the holes in this panel. So there we go. That's that panel mounted on there. I think it looks quite smart actually. So the next step is actually going to be to drill these holes out behind the panel itself, and I'm going to use a nice big step drill for that. So there we have the final fitted article. So yeah, I think that's quite nice and subtle. I've got some labels that I can put on here as well in these locations, just so you know what all the switches are for. I think that turned out quite nice and neat. The only thing I'm going to have to watch out for is making sure that nothing in the boot comes along and hits any of these switches whilst I'm driving. So maybe I'll think of a way that we can put a guard over the top of this or something. But for now, that's going to work really nicely. Let's go and see what it looks like in the truck. There we have it. That's what it's going to look like mounted in the truck. Quite nice and subtle. So yeah, the idea of having these switches here is that it's placed quite nice and close to the back of the vehicle. So say you've got the tailgate down and you're cooking on the tailgate with a gas stove or something, or you're hitching up a trailer, whatever it might be, doing something at the back of the vehicle, you can quickly just reach around, grab one of these switches and turn on your LED lights on the back. Unfortunately, the weather in Ireland is extremely unpredictable, so at that point in the video it did start to rain, so I had to put the cameras away and just carry on doing the job without filming it. However, I do want to show you inside this electrical compartment and show you how it's all wired up and how it works. So let's do that now. So essentially, the way this is wired up is such that all of this is completely dead and until I switch this main isolated switch on down here. When you switch this on, it enables all these other switches and also turns on the battery voltage meter, the 12 volt power outlet and the 2 USB ports just there. So normal running, day to day, when I'm not using anything back here, I'll just run with it completely switched off like that. And that way it's not using any battery power at all in the car. So the only actual auxiliary load I've actually got wired into this switch panel at the moment is the rear spotlights, which I'll show you guys in a minute. So when I turn that switch on, it switches on a relay and then powers the 2 rear reverse lights as spotlights. So now I'll just show you behind the panel and show you how it's all wired up. So this panel still just comes out as normal. So once this panel drops out, you can see the wiring on the back of the switch panels. These switch panels come mostly rewired. I just improved some of the connections and tidied it up a little bit. And then all I've done is use 2 nice sealed Deutsch connectors to connect into the vehicle's power. This single wire here on its own Deutsch connector is what is switching the relay for the rear work lights. So that's what that is. And the advantage is both of these can be really quickly disconnected if you want to take the panel away completely to do some work. As of yet, most of these switches are still unused, but if I do want to add more accessories, say example a fridge or something like that, connect the wiring to the switch and add another relay as appropriate for whatever load I'm putting onto it. These are the relays I've added so far. They actually fit really nicely behind this panel when they're bolted onto an existing hole that's back there. So one of these relays is connected to the rear reverse light circuit. The other one is connected to this switch. So through having 2 relays, I can control those rear lights separately via the reverse lights or via the switch. When I was looking for ways to improve the reverse lights on the Range Rover, there are actually a couple of other ways of doing it. So one of the best ones I've seen is to actually take these units off, gut them, and then actually replace the innards with SMD LED panels. The way that one works is you're basically entirely coating the inside of this light with SMD LEDs. I have actually ordered the parts to do that, so I'm going to do that in addition to these rear lights because I probably don't need it, but more light's always better. And I'll make a video showing you guys how to do that and where to get the parts for it as well. So that'd be quite a nice little mod to do that I think will be enough for most people. And in terms of reversing into the driveway at night, it's made a huge difference, which I'll show you guys in a clip just now. This is what it looks like when I'm trying to reverse into the drive without the extra lights on. As you can see, that's my view out of the rear view mirror. You really can't see that much. I mean, you can just about, if you're very careful, make out where the walls are, but it is a bit sketchy, especially when the weather's bad. You've got rain and wind and storms as we get here fairly often in the winter. So there you go, that's that view. Now let me turn the lights on and you'll see the difference. Okay, same view guys, only difference this time is I've re-enabled the rear extra lights I've added. So there we go. Straight away, I don't know if you guys can make that out, but it's extremely bright behind the truck. And even the reverse camera you can pretty much use in the dark now, which you could never do that before. Makes it like daylight pretty much. So that makes a huge difference when you're trying to get into your driveway at night. So that's the camera with the lights off, camera with the lights on. At this point, girlfriend probably thinks the CIA are outside the house trying to search for her, so I probably better turn them off. These are both floodlights, so they give a nice dispersed light across the whole back of the car as opposed to like spotlights. Yeah, I think that looks really good. On the front of the Range Rover, we're going to mount this beautiful Osram VX500 SP LED light bar. VX500 basically means it's 500mm long, and SP means it's a spotlight, so it's a spot beam which is going to illuminate a long distance down the road. I think the specs for this show that the beam reaches out as far as about 800 meters, so this is really a serious bit of kit. You guys will know you can buy Chinese-made LEDs for a very, very cheap price all over the internet with some seemingly very, very good specifications on them. However, if you read around and watch a few YouTube videos, you'll know that those specifications that the Chinese put on them aren't always completely accurate. So where one might say they've got 10,000 lumens output, in reality when it's tested they're only 3,000 or 4,000 lumens. So that's why I decided to buy something a bit better quality in this Osram unit here, because then at least you know you're going to get what you're paying for. So this is going to be mounted on the front of the Range Rover, and it's going to be tied into the high beams, so it will come on via a relay when the high beams are triggered on the Range Rover. So that will hopefully improve up my forward visibility going down these country lanes. Apart from the truck being absolutely filthy, the other thing you guys will notice is I haven't actually got around to fitting the LED light bar yet. The wiring side of that's going to be really easy, I've got that all figured out, but what I was trying to figure out was basically where to put the light itself. I could easily mount it to the top of the bumper here, just facing forwards, but I'm not sure how that's going to look. What I would really like to do is to mount it within the grille itself. Down here, but within the grille itself, so like kind of recessed a bit further into it, is kind of what I'm thinking for this. I think that'll be quite stealthy, but also puts the light at quite a good height. You guys will be able to see from there better what that looks like, but I think it should look quite cool. So I think what I should do next is probably take the grille off, take it inside, and try and figure out how I'm going to mount this in here without destroying the grille too much. Let's have a look. Never taken this off before, but I'm assuming it's pretty straightforward. There we go. Whilst that's off, might as well pull that bit of bark out. Always good, isn't it? Definitely had some adventures, this truck, in its past. So this is going to be the tool of choice for this job. It's Milwaukee M18 multi-tool. You can also use like a rotary type tool or like a Dremel. They work pretty well for this kind of thing as well. This isn't really the best blade for it, but it should do the job. So in order to get the light bar sitting nicely on this first rung of the grille, I've got to remove a few of these uprights in the grille, all three of these actually. That probably will make the grille a little bit flimsier, but the light itself, once it's screwed into the grille, will strengthen it up quite a bit again as well. It'll stiffen it all up. That's the plan anyway. Anyway, it's just a grille at the end of the day. It doesn't need to be structurally particularly strong. So let's start cutting, I guess. So that's all the uprights removed. We can give this a bit of a clean up later on, but makes it nice and quick and easy and pretty tidy using this guy. GoPro's optional, by the way. So even though those uprights are all removed now, the actual grille hasn't really gotten too much, less stiff. It should still be fine, I think. So the light does actually squeeze in there now. If we bend the grille slightly and squeeze the light unit in, but you can see the angle it's at is obviously no good. So what I need to do now is to try and take away some of the material on this lower part of the grille, just to let it sit back and rotate upwards a bit more. Apart from that, it's pretty much there. So yeah, you can hopefully see just in there and there where I've marked with a paint pen. So that's basically where I'm going to cut into the lower part of the grille, both there and there, and then we're going to cut all the way across there in order to let the light bar sit in there nice and flush. Hopefully, that's the plan anyway. Let's give it a go. So there we go guys, taking that chunk of material out of the grille. Quite a nice clean cut if I do say so myself. I'm just going to tidy it up with this sanding block in a minute, but that should give us a nice lot of clearance for the light to sit in. So we'll just give that a quick test fit now. So there we go guys, after a bit of fiddling around, it now sits in there quite nicely and it's facing at more or less the right sort of angle down the road. I could still adjust it a little bit when I put the brackets on. So that's the main bolts done up. All I've got to do now really is set the angle and then just tighten up these screws in the end. See if you guys can see that in this light. But there are screws in the end which I can use to set the angle. So there we go. First of all guys, apologies for the noise. Back in Leamington I had cars going past making a lot of racket and people walking past. Now I've got annoyed cows just in the field next door, so I mean it's an improvement but it's still not ideal. Anyway. So basically whenever you're doing wiring, as you guys know, you want to keep your wiring runs as short as possible wherever you can. This fuse box is in a pretty good position for us to work from where the light bar is going to be. So we're going to be able to pick up a nice strong power feed from here for the relay. The relay itself can probably fit in this box somewhere as well. And then also, ideally, this wiring loom here is the one that runs down to the headlights. So this yellow and orange wire is actually the wire that supplies the high beam on both the headlights. The reason we need that is because the way I'm going to wire this light bar is so that when the high beams turn on, the light bar comes on as well. Pretty basic. A lot of people have done it over the years on Land Rovers and other vehicles. So this wire is essentially going to be the trigger wire to turn the light bar on whenever I put my high beams on. So we need to tap into this, into the relay, power and ground for the relay, and then relay feed out to the light bar, and we'll be done. Easy. So the first things I need to do is put a plug on the end of the actual light bar. It comes from Osram without a plug on the end, which is fine. So you can add your own one. I've got these imitation Deutsch DT connectors from AliExpress, and they're actually really, really good. They're a nice sealed connector. Probably not as good quality as real Deutsch connectors, but considering they're probably about 1/10 of the cost, I'll live with that, I think. So that's our two terminals on there, nice and strong. And all you've got to do is take your plug, decide which wire's going where. So in my case, we're going to have black on the left side of the plug. Insert your wires until they click. There we go. Make sure your seal stays on, and then all we've got to do is throw on the little locking tab on the front, like that, and that is one fitted Deutsch connector. And it's a really nice, as I said, sealed connector, locking, quite durable, really good for automotive stuff. So now the plug on the light itself is sorted, we're going to move on to the relay. This is the relay I'm going to be using. It's just a 40 amp, single pole, double throw. Something like that anyway, basically a standard automotive relay. I'm thinking it's just going to sit nicely inside the relay box here, just like that, and the lid will fit on there lovely, so it'll all be nice and dry. It also means we can take our main power feed straight from this 100 amp terminal here in the fuse box. We've still got to get the rest of these wires out of the fuse box and then to the light and to this wire here, to the switch wire. So what I'm going to do is, where there's just a bit of space here in the bottom of the fuse box, drill a small hole, fit this grommet, which should keep it nice and sealed, and then we'll be able to pass our wires through there, still keeping the fuse box nice and sealed. I mean, you could try and pass the wire through this grommet here, but it's extremely tight, and I don't really fancy trying to undo all of this this big heat shrink rubber stuff they've got on the back of it. So we're going to make our own little hole. So there we go, guys. There's our relay tucked away nicely. This blue wire is the main power feed, which is going to run onto the big terminal there. This guy we don't need. And then we've got these 3 wires running through the bottom of the fuse box, through a grommet. So just down here, there's an earth terminal, which is used by the rest of the lights. That's going to go on there with the ring terminal. White wire is the switch wire, so that's going to go onto our high beam wire just there. And then this yellow wire is what we're going to connect down into we're going to run an extension down to the front to connect up with the light bar. And that'll be it. I should have mentioned already, guys, but I've already taken off the battery negative terminal. So I'm not at risk of blowing anything up by fiddling around with these wires. So yeah, make sure you do that if you're messing around with the wiring. Anyway, let's continue. Don't know what is ailing those cows, but they are very pissed off about something. They've probably found out somehow that they're going to be turned into ribeyes, and they are not happy with the prospect. Okay. Quite like these crimp terminals. They've got quite a thick sort of heat shrink on them that seems to have a glue in as well. So when they go off, once they've gone soft and then hardened again, they seem extremely tough. Is this lighter knackered? That's the question. There are better ways of doing heat shrink than using a lighter, but I don't have any with me at the moment, so this will have to do. Okay, while that's cooling off, we will take off the 10mm. Pop this guy on top. That cow does not sound happy. That's our power feed for the relay sorted. Next thing I'm going to do is tap this white switch wire into the yellow and orange main beam wire. So we're basically going to cut the wire in 2, strip all the wires, strip all 3 ends, and then put a nice little heat shrink connector in there. I'm just struggling to get a bit of space between the wire and the rest of the wiring bundle, just so we've got enough space to heat shrink it and stuff, but we should just about be okay. There goes nothing. I think we're going to go with this guy. Again, nice thick heat shrink. So let's see if we can jam all together. Okay, that's pretty good. Not too bad. We're just struggling with slightly short wires here. So that's that connection made, nice and strong. Heat shrunk up lovely. So all I've got to do now is wrap that loom back up with electrical tape. But I will just check to see that it all works first before we do that, because you know what happens sometimes. So this is going to be the main wire that runs down to the spotlight. It's not quite as thick as I would have liked to have used. It's plenty thick enough, but I would always use slightly chunkier cable if I could. I just don't have any in stock at the moment, so this will do for now. This is 1.5mm squared. Ideally I'd use 2mm squared, but it'll be fine. Hopefully this guy isn't too seized. Not too bad. Definitely could use a clean up though. Pop him on there. Actually, just give him a quick spritz of contact cleaner. Don't know if that's going to do anything, but we will put it in there anyway. Excellente. So here's where we're at, guys. This is the 2 wires I've run down from the relay and the earth up here. So the last step today is going to be put on this Deutsch connector, just so it matches up with the Deutsch connector on the light bar. Crimp those terminals on, put the plug on, plug it in and then it should work, and then all I've got to do is tidy the wires up. So let's give it a go. Female connector housing, making sure we get it the right way around. So red on that side, and then all we've got to do is make that final connection. You guys probably can't see. And then we're just going to hide this wire nicely so it doesn't show from the front. It should be fine there, to be honest. And then the grille can go back on. To be fair, a lot of the clips on this grille are a bit busted off, so it could do replacing at some point, but for now it'll have to do. There we go. It's not totally hidden, but it's kind of on show and not on show at the same time. I quite like it. Subtle, yet not subtle. I guess if you had one of these trucks and you didn't want it to be looking kind of a bit more off-roady like mine is, you could hide it a bit better than that and hide it a bit further back in the grille, but I think this suits this car's kind of outdoor aesthetic quite well. Very good. All that's left now is to test it, I guess. Of course it's going to work. Pop the negative battery terminal back on. Ignition on, headlights on, and main beam on. You guys know before I do, does it work? Oh yeah, yes it does. That looks awesome. One thing you guys might have noticed then, which is quite interesting, that you might not know on the Range Rover L322, or this era anyway, you probably noticed that the dip beams were like a bluey white colour, the main beams were like a yellowy halogen-y colour. This guy is white obviously because it's LED. So the dip beams on these cars are xenon. Now that is actually your main beam as well, but inside the headlight there's basically a flap or a shutter that comes down to cut off the beam when you're on dip beam. So on dip beam the shutter comes down, cuts off that extra light that's going upwards, which will blind people, and leaves you with a nice cut off, nice low dipped beam. When you hit the main beam, the flap comes up and allows the xenon to beam fully at full brightness. But in addition to that, an H7 halogen bulb in here comes on as well, and they call that like a filling light. And I think the way that works is it basically fills in the gap in the sort of mid-range lighting of the car. So it's quite an interesting setup. I don't think any other cars have really got that kind of setup going on. What I might look at in the future is to replace those H7 halogens in the main beam with some LED units to see if I can get even more brightness out of it. Putting LEDs in is not something I'd recommend for the dip beam on most cars because you can blind people coming the other way if you've got the wrong type of bulb in your car. But on the main beam it doesn't really matter because you're not going to be, hopefully, blasting that into people's faces as they're driving towards you. So we might be able to even improve the lighting output on this even more. We'll have to see. Anyway, let's get this tidied up and then, yeah, that should be the job done. Why can't those cows be nice and quiet like these horses are? Lovely. So that's that loom taped back up again. I've just put a cable tie around there to lean it up, and basically these three wires are going to be the only evidence that anything has ever been changed in here. Once this is back on again, you probably won't notice that there's any extra wiring here at all, unless you really know what you're looking for. And that should pop straight back on, like so. And I've just noticed even the colour of the crimp matches the original ones. How good's that, guys? Definitely planned it that way. Sweet. So there we go, guys. Feels very satisfying to close the bonnet on another job on the Range Rover. Wasn't a necessary job this time, but just a nice upgrade. And with that, we've now got improved lights on the front and the back of the Range Rover. However, I'm not quite done yet. As I mentioned earlier, we can try and put some LEDs in these H7 fittings at the front and see if that makes much of an improvement. If nothing else, it'll make the light temperature or the light colour match everything else that we've got on the front now. Secondly, fog lights. These guys, pretty much as they are now, aren't very useful at all. So I've managed to find a source for some LED replacements that also happen to come with some nice daytime running light LED rings around the outside as well. And they should be a direct replacement for these. So I'll show you guys fitting them as well in the future. I've also got to fit a new AGM battery to the car because this one's pretty much on its last legs. And I've also got a full service kit for the car as well. So oil, filters, cabin filter, air filters, fuel filter, the whole lot has got to go on. So those will probably be the next couple of videos that are coming up on this. I'm going to pop out a bit later on tonight to get some footage to see what the LED light bar does on the road at night. So I'll pop that footage in here. So we've waited for it to get dark. It's not totally dark because we've got a bit of a full moon up there, if you guys can see it, but it should be dark enough to see the difference that the lights are going to make. As I've kind of said before on this car, the dip beams are actually pretty good, especially with the new bulbs that I fitted in that video quite a long time ago. But let's have a look at this full beam and see what difference it makes. Wow. That's ridiculously bright. So what I can see straight away is we're going to need to adjust the angle up a bit if I can, because at the moment it seems to be illuminating right in front of the car, but not too far down the road. So I might have to just see if I can notch that up a bit. But that is incredibly bright. So guys, I've just adjusted the angle of the light bar up slightly. We'll see what difference that's made now. Hopefully we'll get a bit more distance down the road. So here we go. Dip beam, main beam. That's more like it. That is crazy. That's a fantastic long throw on that now. It's amazing. Pretty much where you need it now. Maybe it could stand to go maybe even a little bit higher, but for now that's pretty much bang on. It gives you a huge improvement in vision, sort of at long range down the road. So that's basically it for now. Thanks again for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done already, and I'll see you next time.